Unified's amplets make your investments instantly social. Joe sees a cool Ciroc video. Amplet lets Joe share the video on Twitter and Facebook. His friends watch. Some subscribe to Ciroc. Unified's cloud-based social operating platform captures video views they paid for, plus every earned media action downstream. Shares, views, new fans, even quantified to dollars and cents. Seamlessly create earned media, identify brand advocates, and measure social ROI. True unified marketing.
Well, I guess this is sort of a cold open. Hi, I'm Jon Mandel. I'm the CEO of PrecisionDemand. I've been in the business for a little while at ad agencies and then at the Nielsen company, which can't do a number right. What PrecisionDemand does is we do forward-looking ROI, and we are measuring the effects of television and other media together. Mark?
I'm Mark Keeney. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Rhapsody. And so I've watched the evolution of the digital music landscape and driving subscribers over the last 8 years, and it's been a massive shift. So it's been a really exciting run, and have partnered up with PrecisionDemand as well.
Hi, I'm Robin Opie. I'm from Datalogix, responsible for analytics there. Datalogix is a company that has bridged data from the offline world to the online world, and we use that for both measurement as well as targeting. A big part of our offering is that we really believe in huge scale. So rather than try to measure campaigns against 50 to 100,000 folks, we would really try to measure them against tens of millions of folks, or just a significant portion of those that were that were exposed to a given campaign. We think that's the only way really to inform the targeting and to make it actionable.
I'm Quinn Kilbury, Senior Brand Manager of Innovation for Pepsi. I innovate Pepsi. That's pretty much it.
Well, innovating Pepsi's got to be better than that new Coke thing. So let me lay it out for you this way, because I want you to know this panel is unrehearsed, no questions in advance. We're just going to go with the flow, and it comes from me being a burnout of the 60s. Let me start out with, by the way, Kat, wherever you are, the lady from PepsiCo, you're not the weirdest name person. The brand manager on Calcan used to be a gentleman by the name of Al Poe, so for what it's worth. I think there are a couple of issues that we are all trying to deal with, and that is, who is my customer, and then what media they use, and how do you put it together, and who are my best customers. With that, I will tell you a story. I remember the reason I got into this was I remembered a story on a toothpaste from a company in Pittsburgh that starts with an A and has stripes in it. The brand manager actually looked at me as the network television buyer and said, "What should my brand target be?" I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard in my life, because in my mind, a client, advertiser, marketer knows who their customers are. How do you know who your customer is, Quinn?
Everybody. No, it's a good question. I think a lot of it, when you're dealing with a brand as mature as Pepsi, you've got a lot of data, and you've got a lot of people that raise their hands to say, I drink Pepsi. I think as we move forward, and kind of what a lot of my role is about, is the industry, and particularly colas, have gone under a lot of fire recently. And so we have to work on defining a new target, and that's a lot about bringing people back who love our brand, and people who want to drink it but feel like they shouldn't because everybody's telling them it's bad for them. Not necessarily 100% untrue. So we are working on making that an easier choice to make. And there's a lot of ways to do that. A lot of it's through qualitative, a lot of it's through quantitative, a lot of it's through partnering with people like Robin and Datalogix, by getting down to the data, the nitty-gritty of what people are actually doing versus what they're saying. So if you go to the data, you know what they're buying, then you can target them, and then you can track them, and then you can give them a unique message, and that should do the trick. But it's a combination of data mining and history, I guess.
So let me turn to my own client. It's a setup for my own client to pitch. Mark, you've got a slightly different job. I mean, I can't imagine that when I go into Stop and Shop, that Quinn really knows that I bought Pepsi, or if I bought Coke, or if I bought Diet Dr. Pepper.
If you have a loyalty card, I do.
But you've got a slightly different situation. So how do you do it?
Yeah, I mean, Rhapsody being more of a direct marketing focused company, we know exactly our customers as they're coming in the funnel and who they are and from what channel and from what partnership and so forth they've come from. So now we definitely use the data to tell who they are, but then we, as Quinn mentioned, we validate that with surveying and actually asking the customer so we can kind of round out the full profile of that customer. Because again, being around for 10 years in the digital music space, it's really changed. And initially we were a product built by audiophiles for audiophiles, and now it's much more mass market as adoption is at an all-time high, so it's definitely changed.
Is there more value? Do you ever have a boss that says, just get me more bodies? Is it, in Quinn's case, sell me more cans, or your case, get me more people to sign up, or is it about, let's see what happens in 3 months or 4 months?
Yeah, it's definitely more, we look at our customers in terms of, we're a subscription-based service, so drive the best customers. It's not so much we're not a publicly traded company, so thankfully we don't have that pressure of, artificially inflate numbers for this quarter. But it's more about driving, what are the quality subscribers that we can garner. And so we track all of our acquisition efforts back down to a lifetime duration of a given customer, lifetime value.
Robin, you've got some examples, I think, that you've done for Quinn where it's really just about getting people to drink more gallons or something.
Actually, I think there were a couple of different campaigns. And as a bit of a setup here, the way that we tend to define customers, our heritage from way back being in the direct mail space is that we build models. And the thought there is that the direct mailers were able to support these enormous CPMs. And they did that with very precise targeting. So how do we define the customers? We start with about 50,000 variables in every household, and then we use a known set of people that buy to really figure out who's likely to respond to a given message. And so there were 2 different campaigns for Pepsi, and Quinn, I think you'd be the best person to kind of describe what the objectives were.
Sure, absolutely. So while I'm currently Mr. Innovation, given the massive ADD that Pepsi has, I've had 2 other jobs in the last year. So the other 2 jobs are the ones that led to those 2 cases. The first was for the launch of Pepsi Next. And so Pepsi Next is a good example of how we're trying to bring back people that kind of grew up with cola and love cola but feel a little bit guilty about drinking it now. So it's sort of a mid-calorie option. And that was a unique launch, right? And so we partnered with Datalogix and one of our customers, our biggest customers, on essentially, we knew who we wanted to speak to, people who were buying less cola, less regular cola, and weren't picking that up with Diet Cola. And we identified that through lots of data and customer card information and online cookies to target folks online who fit that profile. So basically the intent was they've never purchased this product before, it's brand new, but we think you fit the profile of somebody who would drink it. And so that's essentially what we did online. And we were overtly excluding anyone who drank a lot of Pepsi Now or a lot of Diet Pepsi Now. We don't want to talk to you. Perfectly happy with you now. We want the people who are buying less of us and less of the category. So that was an example of, it was a unique example, honestly, because we didn't have a base to talk to. The other example, I was the brand manager on Diet Pepsi, and there we have the exact opposite issue. We are a very mature brand that's been declining a little bit here and there every year. So we need to talk to our loyals. We need to get our loyals to re-engage. So online, our targeting, and this again was partnering with the customer so we could get in-store support as well as online traffic driving. Basically, we're driving our loyal Diet Pepsi users to this customer. But this was about getting our current to buy more and not to switch to the competitor. So it's 2 different targeting approaches, but both very effective. We didn't want anybody seeing this. The ad that we were putting out online, we only wanted one particular type of person to see it. We didn't want anybody else to see it, and that's been successful so far, we think.
So speaking of different targets, Mark, what's your experience been in finding what I would call outliers? You know, they're different than what you think from a business perspective.
Well, I think one way, I think the question you're going at is, what might be our best customer right now in aggregate view, when you kind of break it down into smaller clusters, the responsive rate is so much different based on the medium and so forth. So we've had some surprises there where you think that your best customer looks like X, but as you go out to reach them, it turns out they're not responsive in that medium, and you're grabbing a whole nother segment. I think that's kind of the direction you're going. Whereas other times, targeting a completely, maybe not your best customer, but your second best customer, in aggregate has a collateral benefit of not only reaching your best customer, but also a greater or volume of that sort of second tier customer, if you will. That makes sense in that broad sense.
It does make sense only because we lived it, but the idea being, I assume you guys get this, the idea being that you can get this much here, but if you were to go to what you thought was a lower customer, they're actually better customers, which, Robin, you've been an analytics person for about forever. So what is better? How do you tease out who is a better customer?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. There are a number of, I guess, quantitative techniques that you can use to do that. One of the easy ways is just to develop a couple of models. One has to do with responsiveness, who's going to respond. And then in a completely separate model, you model lifetime value based on what you can observe, or some other profit-driven metric. It really doesn't matter. It'd be whatever kind of meets those objectives. And then you can mix the two models together to drive the higher level objective, which is, you know, usually a measure of profitability or total revenue over time, something along those lines. And then I think the point, and the reason I was so excited about this panel in particular, is it's one thing to build a model and to go into the math weeds, and, you know, to a degree, this is revenge for all of us that never got to go to prom. No, I'm kidding. No, the thought is that a model is absolutely worthless unless you have incredibly accountable measurement on the other side. And I think that, especially in the digital media space, is incredibly challenged, right? Because we have our online transactions, and traditionally the ability to link those with offline activity has been difficult in other sectors for sure. And so build the model, measure it, use the measurement to make the model better, and just iterate as quickly as you can, but the measurement has to be complete, it has to be tight, and it has to be enormous in scale. Because it's one thing to say thumbs up or thumbs down, gee, a campaign worked, a campaign didn't work. It's another thing to be able to say which messages resonated with which consumers and who responded how. And if you don't have millions and millions of observations, you really can't get to that level of detail without the math noise just sort of eating you alive.
How do you get to, and I mean, we have our methodology, but I'll try and help you guys out here. You know, in the 50s, John Paul Jones did a lot of pioneering research on how media works together. I don't think there's anybody in this room that uses a single medium, but it's a classic case of 1 + 1 = 3. You know, we all look down on, and not direct marketing, because after all, I'm sitting next to one, but direct marketing, like the stuff you get in your mailbox, you know, at an ad agency, that's really the low of the low. Oh, those guys that stuff envelopes. It is amazing to me how when you do television at the same time you do a mail drop, or you do radio at the same time you do a mail drop, the mail drop works better. How do you, and the same thing with online, or online drives TV, it all is related. How do you tease that out to get the net effect, if you will, the halo?
Yeah, is that for me?
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think the best way to do it is just through very careful test and control design. So many people throw marketing campaigns out there without really an understanding of what their measurement strategy needs to be. We have unbelievable amounts of data at our disposal, all of us do, and to the point earlier, we're kind of swimming in it. The way you make it actionable is you put together a really good plan. How do I, in the direct mail case, it would be an upfront holdout, right? How do I take some random sample of the people that I was going to mail, put them off to the side, and then see how the behavior differed for those that got that mail piece versus those that didn't get that mail piece. The exact same concept applies to a digital campaign. Slight twist, in the digital world, the people that you set out to reach are not always identical to the people that you actually do reach with an impression, right? And so the way you have to make that control is you see who's exposed, and then there are a number of, we call it a forensic control or a pseudo control. There are a number of different ways to find a group of folks that look like them, so that you can also look at the differences in behavior. And if the controls are large enough, then you can be assured that just as many people on the control side were exposed to a given TV campaign as was the case on the test side. You need to balance for demographics and other things that would represent that. But these are all, not only are these solvable problems, these are problems that have been solved. And I think right now the big call in my mind is to standardize the way that we view these metrics across the different channels, which is not that hard to do now, right? You can have a control in the direct mail space, you can have a control in the digital space. You guys are doing some interesting work in the television space as well. And as long as you have all of the transaction data, all of the behavior data, which is why we've kind of gone bananas with the, in particular in the CPG space with all of the CPG retailers, you can absolutely begin to compare and contrast all these different campaigns.
Yeah, and I'll just echo that from Robin's point of view. Like we try not to do anything. We absolutely do some, but everything we do is completely targeted now to a point of like ridiculousness. And then we can track the back end too, right? Because we know who's buying it. We know who saw the message. And then from customer cards, we can say, did they buy more? So that wasn't true even 2 years ago. But we can now track that from the TV perspective, from a digital perspective, and that's it. But that's really been the benefit.
Okay, but Quinn, you're saying, but we can track it. And one of the things that has always made me crazy about all business is ROI should be really spelled CYA. Because every brand manager I've ever had wants the ROI just to prove to the boss that he didn't fuck up, okay? Yeah. So you and Mark are marketing guys, but you got to deal with like CFOs, procurement types, bean counters. But how does the data make your life any easier on a looking forward basis as opposed to a looking back?
If it's good data, it does, yeah.
I think it absolutely does, and just one other piece to add is the window of success. So too often I think we are measured on what happened yesterday as opposed to sort of looking at the whole window. You know, advertising, marketing today is actually going to pay off not only today or tomorrow, but also months down the road in the form of residuals. And that's a key factor that often is your CFO in your company just has a harder time grokking.
Yeah, I'm going to chime in with one last question because we actually are out of time. We don't have time for Q&A, but I do have one question. So you're talking about looking behind in terms of data measurement and analysis. So when you're looking forward, because everybody knows you're looking backward, how accurate are those forward-looking projections? Percentage-wise, 75, 85, 95, like how do you project forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think the looking forward, by looking back, just gives you greater confidence as you plan out your forward. So you can have with greater certainty that you're going to actually hit it. There isn't an actual figure per se, but just with more and more experience and more trial and error, you actually can, refine that.
I will, that's one of those things that I have been taught I must defer to my geeks and nerds up in Seattle. But I will point out to you that we have one client who sells their product directly, and they also sell their product in some big box stores. And I was on the due diligence team looking at this PrecisionDemand. And in that, I talked to the big box store. And the guy who was the buyer of that category said to me he has, I can't remember, I think it's 3,400 stores, 3,200 stores. He said, now I don't know, but those hippies up in Seattle, now I'm pretty good with the numbers, and I think I'm good when I get within 10%, but those hippies in Seattle, they all estimated 13 SKUs by week for 13 weeks leading up to Christmas. He says, goddamn, in 2 stores in 1 week each, they were off by 4%. The others, they were never off by more than 1%.
And can we guess the executive by the accent?
So, this gentleman down in Charlotte, he said to me that I don't care if our client gets cheaper advertising, better advertising. He said, you know what I save in out of stock and overstocks as a retailer? That is key to me. So that's a pretty good number. Now, we had a boatload of data to do that. I mean, I don't think we're that good on Mark's business. And we have some other businesses that if we get within 15%, it's excellent. But it depends on the data. But you can, and it depends on the product. I mean, we have a client who's a dental implant, and the average sale is north of $20,000. So you don't have to be too accurate in numbers, because when you're dealing with a $20,000 sale, you know, it can move a little and you're happy.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you, and we are running short on time, so thank you very much. Measurement is obviously a huge issue for all the brands in the audience. Are you going to be around for the rest of the afternoon if there are questions? People can find you during lunch, etc. If you guys can all sit, I'm just going to direct you for the little bit of rest of day slides.